Hey scholars, this is Jennifer from Ask Scholars, and welcome back to another video on our series of how to get a 36 on the ACT. Today, we're going to be doing a quick overview of the ACT reading section, and I'm going to give you 3 tricks that will help you be successful on this section of the ACT. So, first up, the ACT reading passage is one of the fastest passages in my opinion. It's definitely very quick, it's very fast-paced, and the reason behind this is because you only have 40 questions and 35 minutes to answer all of those questions. And if you do the math, that's 52.5 seconds per question. And you do get 4 reading passages. So if you were to divide that, you usually get an average of 10 questions per passage. Sometimes you do get like 9 or 11, but most of the times you're going to get 10 questions per passage. Alright, so for the types of passages that you're going to be seeing on the ACT, you're going to be seeing 4 different types of passages. So every passage is about 800 words, and the first section is going to be about prose fiction. And I'll describe it in detail a little later on about what each of these passages entails. But yeah, the second one is going to be social science. The third one is going to be humanities, and your fourth passage will always be natural science. And a good thing to note is that it's always going to be in this particular order. So don't worry about natural sciences being like your very first passage. It's always going to be prose fiction as your first passage, and you'll end with natural science. And it's good to, kind of remember this so that you're not really shocked by the surprise when you're taking the real ACT. Alright, so when it actually comes to studying for the ACT reading section, one of the most common tips that you're going to hear is that people will tell you to read the questions first. And for my first tip, it's actually going to be the opposite. I would recommend that you read the passage first and try to get the main idea. And I'm not saying that, both one of the methods that I mentioned is, right or wrong, but what I would highly recommend for you to do is for you to, try out both of these methods. Try out reading the questions first or reading the passage first and see what works best for you. And by doing this, you'll really understand what works or what is most efficient for you, and you can use that tactic on the real ACT test. And this is just my personal experience, but reading the passage first was a lot better for me because when I read the questions first, I tend to forget what the questions were asking for, and because it's so time pressuring, I don't have enough time for the questions to really absorb in my head. So what I do is I read the passage first and really try to understand what the whole general gist is in order to help me answer the questions a little later on. So for my second tip, it would be to read above and below in order to get your answer. So in some questions, which I'll show later, they'll ask you to refer back to a certain line in the passage. And when you get these line references, what I would highly recommend for you to do is to read above and below those line references in order to get the supporting evidence that you need for your answer. So my third tip is for you to kind of realize that answer is a lot more obvious in the ACT. And this is more of kind of like a reliever, but the thing is, because the ACT is so fast, they had to accommodate for that somehow, and because of that, they make the answers more obvious than it is compared to the SAT. So now we're going to switch over to an official practice test by the ACT, and we're going to apply these tips and tricks to that. Alright, so right here I have the 2019 to 2020 official ACT practice test, and if you guys are interested in taking this practice test, I'm going to drop the link down below. And I do this for almost every video, and that'll be really good practice for you guys. But I did want to show you an example of how the reading passage looks like. So right here I have that pulled up, and it's really good to read this ahead of time, but it's this top part right here. Let me get a pen. So it tells you, like I said earlier, you have 35 minutes to answer 40 questions. And there are 4 passages, and each passage has an average of 10 questions. Usually you get 10, sometimes you get 9 or 11, but most of the time you're going to get 10 questions per passage. And it's good to read these directions ahead of time so you don't waste your time when you're actually taking the real test, because you are under a lot of pressure. And I think, in my opinion, the reading section is one of the more fast-paced test because you have to read and answer questions simultaneously. So it can be very time crunching. All right, so I'm going to break down what each of the passages is about. So for the first one, it's always going to be the prose fiction section. So in prose fiction, you're going to be getting subjects that talk about like short stories, novels, memoirs, and personal essays. And yeah, as you can see here, let's look at this one. It's also called a literary narrative right here. That's like one type of prose fiction that they could use. But they use a lot of the words I, and yeah. So for the second passage, it's going to be about social studies. And social studies usually covers topics such as anthropology, geography, economics, political science, psychology, sociology, and so much more. But like I said, you don't need to know any of these topics. The ACT passage will give you all the info you need in order to answer the questions that you need to answer. But yeah, so we'll move on to the next passage. All right, so for our third passage, we're going to get the passage on humanities. And for humanities, they usually cover topics such as architecture, art, dance, ethics, theater, television, music, philosophy, and so much more. But in this section in particular, they are talking about music, and you can tell by the word musician in our first sentence. And the rest of the paragraph or the passage is talking about like jazz in particular. So it's a good idea to kind of read your first sentence in order to get a better idea of what you're going to be reading about. Okay, so for our very last passage, we have the natural sciences passage. And in this passage, they will cover topics such as anatomy, astronomy, microbiology, natural history, physiology, physics, technology, medicine, and sometimes zoology. So you get a lot of range in the science sections, and like I said earlier, you don't need to know any science knowledge beforehand. They will give you all the info you need in order to be successful on this section. But as you can see in this section in particular, they are talking about astronomy. And you can see that by the words galaxy, Milky Way, etc., etc. So yeah. Okay, so for our questions, a lot of the questions that the ACC asks are about 3 general ideas. 1, it's about the main idea. 2, it's about the characters. And 3, it's about a specific line in the passage. So for example, if we were to look at question number 1, it asks us about the narrator of the passage. So it's really good to kind of take notes on, the characters that are happening or occurring in your passage. And basically, this question is asking about the narrator. Also, if we look at question 7, it asks us about the narrator again. Another thing to note is that some of these questions will also ask you to refer back to certain lines in the passage. So, for example, if we were to look at question 6, it asks you to look back at line 80. And if we were to look back on question 8, it asks you to refer to lines 35 and 36. And if you remember, there was a tip that I mentioned earlier where it asks you to read above and below the lines. So for question number 8, it told you to go to line 35 to 36. So basically, what you want to do is find that line that they're referring to, and you want to read above and below that line in order to find the most appropriate answer for that question. And as you're taking notes, like everyone has a different note-taking style, but I would recommend that you reduce the amount of words that you write just because it takes up so much time and you only have 52.5 seconds per question. But also I would say, make something quick like underlining, circling, drawing stars to help you identify certain points in the passage. And, if you don't know a certain word or what it means, it's totally okay. You can use context clues. And yeah, there are these numbers on the side right here that will tell you like what line you're on, and these are really good when there are questions asking you to refer back to a certain line. So yeah, this was a very, very quick overview of the ACT reading section. I really hope that this helps, and There's going to be a lot more videos on the reading section coming up. And if you guys need any more help, you can always drop a comment down in the comment section below, or you can contact us through our contact us page, which can be found on our website, which is in our description below. So thank you guys for watching, and good luck studying!